Hey folks, my name is Tim Collins. I'm a jazz vibraphonist, and in this video I'm going to answer some questions that users sent to me about my basic approach to playing the actual vibraphone. So this is what I call the Collins technique. Okay, I want to talk about tone on the vibraphone. Mainly, it's very easy to get a good one. You just want to find the right spot of the bar to hit, and that's generally just slightly above the center of the bar. So when I'm soloing, I'm always aiming for that spot on both the sharps and the flats. Sometimes when you're playing chords with four mallets, it can be difficult to reach the notes on the upper keyboard, particularly on a B major or a B7 chord, something like that. And in those cases, I know there are people that firmly believe that you should always try to hit the bar in the middle no matter what. That's probably true more in the classical world than it is in jazz, only because the jazz setting that most of the times people are playing in, you're not going to hear the difference between playing at the edge of the bar and playing in the center of the bar. I don't go overboard to try to do that. I just play the chords at the edge when I feel like I have to, and when I feel like it's easy enough to reach the center of the bars, I do that. Sticking. Okay, now there's many trains of thought on this in the jazz vibraphone world, as tiny as it is. I subscribe to the theory that I practice all my scales with alternate sticking, starting with both left and right. That's actually an idea that I got from going to a Barry Harris workshop back in 1997, when I was so old, and he basically told me, learn how to play the scales with both hands, and it makes sense because you never know what hand you're going to be on in the middle of a line while you're improvising, so you want to be able to physically reach the notes that you want to get when you're in that mode of improvisation. So I practice all my scales at least 2 octaves, starting with both the right and the left. Comping. Okay, well, I've got a whole video about my approach to comping on the vibraphone, but from a technical standpoint, there's just a few basic things that I do myself, and one of them is, first of all, I don't always use 4 mallets. Sometimes I'll just use 2 when I'm soloing, and then I'll pick up the 3rd or a 4th when I want to play chords. Steve Nelson is a guy who does this a lot. Victor Feldman used to do this. Bobby Hutcherson used to do this too sometimes. He always solos with 2, but he would put the 2 down when he was going to solo, and then he'd pick them up again when he wanted to play chords. And by extension, not always 4-note chords. You don't need to always fill up all the sound, both rhythmically and harmonically. The vibraphone is a treble clef instrument, and it can get annoying really quick. So I generally try to play as little as possible while I'm comping, because I feel that it doesn't really interfere with the interplay between bass and drums and whoever the soloist might be. Soloing on the vibraphone, my approach is generally, and I say this not realizing that sometimes I don't do it when I'm soloing, but my general approach is to use mallets 2 and 3, the inner 2 mallets. I more or less look at it like I'm a 2-mallet player who just happens to be holding extra mallets on the outer part of my hand. Joe Locke plays like this, Mike Manieri plays like this, and I will admit, however, when I'm playing in a solo situation where things are getting loud and I feel like I need to get as much sound and more power out of the instrument, I will switch to 2 and 4, which is the way Gary Burton plays. But then if I need even more power, honestly, I'll just put 2 mallets down and play with 2. I've done that when I played with salsa bands and things like this, where there's a lot of percussion and it's very loud and everything is mic'd. And so, yes, but my general approach is to play with the inner 2 mallets on the vibes, even if I'm holding 4. Okay, let's talk about pedaling. Pedaling on the vibes is something that is often overlooked and neglected when people are learning how to play. My general approach actually is to, a lot of the times, not really use it very much at all until I get to the end of a phrase. So maybe I'll play a long phrase that has a running succession of 8th notes. I will either have the pedal completely up, it depends on what vibraphone I'm playing. Some vibraphones have a nice ring even when the pedal is up. Others, you need to put it down a little bit to get more of a sound. So I will either have the pedal half or not at all until I get to the final note of the phrase, and if I want that note to ring, I will then put the pedal down. Another way is to pedal the chord changes, and that basically means if you're on a C minor 7 chord, you let all the notes of the chord ring because you're not going to get any clashing and it fills the sound nicely. And then when you switch to the F7 chord, you pedal again to cut off the sound of the C minor 7 chord because you don't want any clashing. I think basically, I mean, I learned pedaling on the piano when I was a little kid. I took piano lessons since age 6. And it more or less transferred directly over to the vibraphone. So I never really had any lessons on vibraphone pedaling. Because I learned it already from piano. I mean, the basic concept is you want to train yourself so that you hear the clash of notes, and as soon as you hear a clash of notes, you just pedal. And so that by default means that when there's chord changes that are, you know, like when the chords have moved, obviously you're going to hear a clashing note. If you're still hearing a B flat from the C minor 7 chord while the rest of the band is playing an F7 chord, that clashes, and I immediately hear it, and I will just pedal up and down to get rid of it, and then you can start again on the new chord. Then, of course, there's mallet dampening. You know who the master, everybody knows the master of this is David Friedman. He wrote a ton of books and music that are great etudes for learning mallet dampening. It's a great technique because then you can play a chord and let it ring, and then you can play melodies over the top of it and use your mallets to dampen the sound. And the whole time the foot pedal will be pushed down so that everything rings. And you can get a nice effect that way. It's sort of like using the sostenuto pedal on the piano. Okay, grip. My feelings on the grip are I don't care what grip you use. I don't care what grip anybody promotes, I don't think there's a right or wrong way. It just depends on the person and what you feel. And I learned Burton grip when I was in college when I started playing 4 mallets. I'd learned Stevens grip from marimba, but that always felt more awkward to me on the vibraphone because I was playing with loud bands, so I felt the more need for volume out of the vibraphone, and Stevens grip is a little harder for me personally to get that. So I used Burton grip, but frankly, I don't care. You can stick a mallet in your nose and play it, and if you still sound good, then maybe I'll try that. Now I'm going to play the melody to Donna Lee to sort of demonstrate my technical approach to playing difficult lines on the vibraphone. I'll do it once with 2 mallets, and then I'll do it again with 4 mallets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. with 4 mallets, starting with the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2.